Hello and welcome to today's episode of Foreign Trade. This episode will tell you about the concept, salient features and theories of foreign trade. This will also provide insight on the advantages and the disadvantages of foreign trade as well as the concept of balance of payment and its structure. I am Dr. Sumbul Zama, PhD in Human Resource Management from the Center for Management Studies, Jamia Millia Islamia University, New Delhi, and I am into teaching. Let us start with the concept of foreign trade. Foreign trade concept. Trade may be defined as an exchange of goods and services. Since any country cannot have all the goods and services required, therefore, there is a need for exchanging goods and services in order to fulfill the demands of people. When trading takes place internally, that is within the political boundaries of a country, it is known as domestic trade. However, when it takes place externally among the countries, that is beyond the boundaries of a country, then it is a foreign trade. Foreign trade may be defined as the exchange of goods and services between one country and the rest of the countries that extend beyond the political boundaries of the countries engaged in it. It has been contributing to the economic progress of the nations, especially that of the less developed countries. The onset of MNCs has also influenced foreign trade. Also, the organizations like IMF, World Bank, GATT, UNCTAD, OPEC have furthered its importance. Basic reasons for foreign trade. Foreign trade has been growing fast as businesses are becoming global due to the competitive business environment and liberalization policy. Following are the reasons for international trade to take place. It is not possible for a particular nation to produce all the required goods and services as the countries differ in their natural resources, mineral resources, capital, climate, technology, skills, etc. that is required to produce a good and services. There are differences in the production capabilities of the countries. The countries specialize in the production of those goods and services in which they have comparative advantages. It is the gains or the profits from international trade that forms its basis. The basic reason for international trade is the differences in the prices of goods and services. Foreigners buy our goods as they find them cheaper and we buy foreign goods as we find them cheaper. This may arise because of the differences in the supply and the demand conditions. The differences in the supply conditions may arise due to factor abundance, natural and economic resources, labor skills, technology and production capacity, etc. The differences in the demand conditions are due to the function of income levels or due to the taste patterns. Salient features of foreign trade. Natural resources. The countries specialize in the production of those commodities in which they are richly endowed in terms of natural resources. Factor immobility. The international immobility of labor is due to the difference in language, customs, occupational skills, etc. and the international immobility of capital is due to the prospects of investments in foreign countries, banking system, instability of foreign currencies and legal redress, etc. Markets. The markets are different in terms of tastes, languages, usage, etc. Currencies. The difference in currencies, their relative values and monetary and foreign exchange policies affect foreign trade. Balance of payment. The problem of disequilibrium in the balance of payment that may be corrected by the countries through the adoption of deflation, devaluation or restriction on imports. However, this may further create problems. Transport costs. International trade involves high transport costs. National policy. The artificial barriers such as quota, import duties, tariffs, exchange controls, etc. on the movement of goods and services in international trade are affected by national policies. Advantages related to foreign trade. Foreign trade helps the countries to specialize in the production of those goods in which they have special advantages such as natural resources, capital, manpower, technology, etc. It can supplement the shortage of resources or essential materials. It is through foreign trade that the markets for products have been expanded to cover the entire world. It has led to greater degree of specialization and large scale production. Disadvantages related to foreign trade. The movement of goods internationally involves the cost of transporting them across national boundaries. Apart from paying for freight, the other costs are insurance handling, storage, etc., which in turn influence the price and volumes of goods that are internationally traded. Tariffs, an instrument of commercial policy, tend to raise the prices of imported goods by making them more expensive. This in turn discourages the domestic consumers to buy foreign goods. The non-tariff barriers such as monetary restrictions, technical and administrative regulations affect foreign trade. Theories of foreign trade. The classical approaches. Ricardo's theory of comparative cost. This is a classical theory of foreign trade by Ricardo and Taussig. The basis of international trade, according to them, is that the country will export those commodities in which it has greatest comparative advantages and import those commodities in which it has comparative disadvantage is the least. Assumptions. There are two countries A, B having similar tastes and producing the same two commodities X, Y. The labor theory of value has been used. The relative value of a commodity is measured as per the relative labor content. Labor is the only factor of production and labor units being homogeneous. The commodities are produced under the law of constant costs and returns, and there are no trade barriers in their movement. Trade between the two countries takes place through barter system. The factors of production are immobile between the countries. The exchange ratio for the two commodities between two countries are same. The international market being perfect. Critical appraisal of the theory of comparative cost. It involves labor costs and neglect non-labor cost in calculating the production cost. People having similar taste in a particular country is an unrealistic assumption. The assumption that an increase in the output due to international specialization is followed by constant cost is a weak one, as there may either be increasing or diminishing costs. The assumptions that the factors of production are fully mobile internally and that there is a perfect and free world trade is also unrealistic. It only concentrates on the supply side and not on the demand side. Also, this theory is not concerned with resource creation or mobilization. The theory does not guarantee that the international terms of trade will be mutually beneficial to distribute the gains among the trading companies. Taussig's restatement of comparative cost doctrine. The contribution of Taussig to the theory of international trade is mentioned as the restatement of comparative cost doctrine. He organized classical materials into a well-coordinated general theory of international trade, He revised the classical doctrine of comparative costs, especially with the problems arising from the existence of different types of labor that were a stumbling block for the labor theory of value. Taussig showed that the comparative difference in labor cost can be converted into money prices. According to Taussig, other factors such as capital, raw material and land also contribute to the production. He further was of the opinion that the total money cost incurred on labor as well as other factors should be considered in order to assess the comparative cost of various commodities. Since the factor proportion used in the production of commodities in different countries are different, therefore, it is unrealistic to consider the relative efficiency of labor alone. Haberler's theory of opportunity cost. Ricardo's theory of comparative cost states that labor is the only factor of production and is used in the same fixed proportion in the production of all commodities. This has been criticized and the shortcomings of this theory have been overcome by Haberler's opportunity cost theory. According to this theory, the cost of first commodity is similar to the amount of the second commodity that has been given up to leave enough resources to produce additional unit of first commodity. Therefore, if a country can produce either commodity X or Y, the opportunity cost of X is the amount of opportunity cost of Y that must be given up to get one additional unit of commodity X. The opportunity cost therefore is the exchange ratio between two commodities. Assumptions: there are two countries A and B and each country possesses two factors of production, labor and capital. There are two factors of production in each country, that is labor and capital. Two commodities X and Y are produced. There is perfect competition and the price of each commodity equals its marginal money cost. The supply of each factor is fixed and these factors are immobile between the countries and mobile between the two countries. Based on these assumptions, the production possibility under different cost conditions is shown through different possibility curves. The shape of the production possibility curve under different cost conditions determine the basis as well as the gains from foreign trade. When the amount of Y has to be given up to get an additional quantity of X remains constant, it indicates constant opportunity cost. When more quantity of Y is required to be given up for an additional quantity of X, it would indicate increasing opportunity cost. When, in order to get an additional quantity of X, less quantity of Y is required to be given up, it would indicate decreasing opportunity cost. Criticisms of Haberler's opportunity cost theory. The opportunity cost fails to measure the real costs in forms of sacrifices or disutilities. The production possibility curve of opportunity cost theory does not consider changes in the factor supplies. The theory is based on assumptions like two countries, two commodities, two factors, perfect competition, perfect factor market, full employment, no technical change, etc., which are unrealistic. The modern approach. The modern approach involves two main propositions. The Heckscher-Ohlin theorem, which hypothesizes that a country has a comparative advantage in production and export of commodity, which uses the country's factor of production that is found in abundance. The factor price equalization theorem, which hypothesizes that trade equalizes the factor prices between the countries. Heckscher-Ohlin theorem. The comparative cost theory is incomplete as it failed to explain how the comparative cost differences takes place. The reason for comparative cost difference has been explained through general equilibrium theory, which is also known as modern theory of international trade. L.E. Heckscher 1919 and Bertil-Ohlin 1933 gave the modern theory of international trade, according to which the pattern of production specialization and the trade among the regions is determined by the quantitative differences in the factor endowments and the factor prices in the different regions. It focuses on the relative prices of factors, which in turn influences the prices of goods. The theory involves following situations. There are two countries that differ in factor abundance. There are two factors of production, capital and labor. There are only two commodities, one commodity being labor intensive in both countries and the other being capital intensive in both countries. Factor scarcity abundance in the terms of price criterion. Factor scarcity or abundance in terms of physical criterion. Heckscher and Ohlin were of the opinion that the reason for international trade is the difference in the commodity prices. Those high price commodities which require large quantities of scarce factors are imported, whereas the commodities that are low priced are exported. The concept of factor endowment distinguishes two countries in terms of being capital abundant, capital rich, or labor abundant, labor rich. The capital surplus country specializes in the production and export of capital intensive goods, whereas the labor surplus country specializes in the production and export of labor intensive goods. Criticisms of Heckscher-Ohlin theory. The assumption of Heckscher-Ohlin theory, such as perfect competition, full employment of resources, identical production function, constant returns to scale, and the absence of transportation costs are oversimplified. It assumes that the pattern of international trade in a static setting. Also, the countries have homogeneous factors with similar production techniques, which is unrealistic. It also unrealistically assumes that the tastes and the demand patterns of consumptions are same in both the countries. It neglects the role played by the product differentiation in international trade. Also, specialization is not governed by factor proportions, but also by various other factors like cost and price differences, transport costs, economies of scale, etc. Comparison between the classical and modern theory of international trade. The Heckscher-Ohlin theorem points out that the basis of international trade is the difference in the final price of commodity between the countries that may be a satisfactory explanation for the existence of international trade. The Ricardian theory does not explain the reasons for the existence of comparative cost differences between nations. However, Heckscher-Ohlin theorem says that the basic reason behind this may be capital abundant or labor abundant. It is superior to the comparative cost theory, as the classical theory is based on unrealistic assumption of labor theory of value. Also, the opportunity cost theory considers pre-trade and post-trade situations under constant increasing and decreasing opportunity cost, whereas comparative cost theory only considers constant cost of production within a country. The opportunity cost can be measured easily. The opportunity cost theory explains why and when the trade should take place. The opportunity cost theory explains why and when the trade should take place. The factor price equalization theorem. The theorem demonstrates that international trade brings about equalization of product prices and factor prices. It says that when the price of outputs gets equal between two countries as they move in free trade, then the prices of factors, labor and capital would also get equal. Assumptions. It assumes that the absence of tariffs and non-tariff barriers and that there are no transport costs in the export and import of goods, which was not possible in the real world. The equalization of factor prices is possible only if the production factors are perfectly mobile internationally. It assumes perfect competition and diminishing returns to scale in production, which is not possible practically. It assumes that factor supplies remain fixed in every country, which is unrealistic. Factor price equalization theorem therefore says that if the factors of production are immobile internationally and the goods are exchanged between countries, then the price of these factors become equal. Balance of payment concept. The statistical statement of any country is known as the balance of payment. The balance of payment of a particular country is the systematic record of all its economic transactions with the rest of the world in a particular year. It includes the receipts and the payments of international transactions, services rendered, payments to residents and capital transferred to foreign countries. To have a better understanding of the balance of payment, we need to know the following. Balance of trade. It is the difference between the value of goods and services sold by the residents and firms of the home country, exports, and the goods and services purchased by them from the foreign countries or imports. It is highly important to have a trade balance in the country's BOP. If export is equal to import, then there is a balance of trade. Export is greater than import, then there is a surplus. Export is smaller than import, then there is deficit. Balance of payment on current account, also known as net foreign investment. It is the contribution to foreign trade. It covers the receipts on the account of earnings and all the payments arising out of spending. Balance of payment on capital account. It consists of long-term and short-term capital accounts. It involves all the inward and outward movement of capital and investment, that is long-term, short-term, direct or portfolio, private or government, etc. Basic balance. It comprises of the BOP on current account plus long-term capital account. An active basic balance is a good sign and a passive basic balance is a bad sign. Overall balance of payment. It is the sum of the balance on current account and capital account. It includes international monetary transactions between a particular country and the rest of the world. Structure of balance and payments. It includes the current account and the capital account. Current account. It includes exports and imports, receipts of and payments of services, credit items including merchandise exports and invisible exports, debit items including merchandise imports and invisible imports. Capital account. It includes long-term capital for more than a year. It may be the long-term loans, foreign currency deposits, foreign investments, unclaimed receipt. Bank capital, that includes the external financial assets and liabilities of those commercial and cooperative banks that deal with foreign currencies. Official capital includes RBI holdings in terms of foreign currency. Capital outflow or debit, capital inflow or credit. Debit includes the short-term and the long-term investments in the home country. Credit includes short-term as well as long-term investments in the home country. Unilateral payment or transfer account. They include gifts, government grants, disaster relief funds and private remittances. Official reserve account. It represents the holdings by the government official agencies, payments to settle international claims. The balance of payment account of a particular country is constructed on the principle of double entry bookkeeping, as every transaction is entered on the credit and the debit side of the balance sheet. The payment received from a country is a credit transaction, whereas payment given to another country is a debit transaction. Items included on the credit side: export of goods and services, unrequited or transfer receipts such as gifts or grants from foreigners, borrowings from abroad, foreign investments, official sale of reserved assets, items included on the debit side, imports of goods and services, transfer of unrequited payment to foreigners, that is gifts, grants, investment by residents to foreign countries, official purchase of reserve assets from foreign countries and international agencies. The balance of payment statement includes 6 major accounts. They are as follows. Goods account. It includes the value of merchandise export and merchandise import. It's 0 when the receipt from export of goods is equal to the payment of import. It's positive or favorable if the receipt exceeds payment and negative or unfavorable if the payments exceed receipt. Service account. It includes the services exported and imported. They include banking and insurance, tourism, expenses on military personnel, interests, dividends, etc. from other countries. Service balance is the sum of services receipts and payments. The sum could be positive, negative or 0. Unilateral transfer account. It includes gifts, grants, reparation receipts and payment to foreign countries. Long-term capital account. Amount of capital that has moved into or out of the country for a period of 1 or more year. It includes the following: private direct investment, investment of home country into foreign country or debit or by foreigners in home country or credit. Private portfolio investment, investment or stock, bond and share of home country into foreign countries, security or debit, and investment, stock, bond and share of a foreigners in home country securities or credit. They have different interest rates, dividends or rate of return. Loans given to the home country governments by foreign governments. Short-term capital account. This is for less than a year and includes bank deposits, credit arrangements and fall into this category. International liquidity account. It records the net changes in foreign reserves. That was all for today. Today we learned the concept of foreign trade, its salient features as well as the advantages and disadvantages associated with it. We came to know about the various approaches and theories related to foreign trade. We also studied the concept of balance of payment as well as its structure. We will meet in the next episode with a new topic. Till then, take care. Goodbye.